I wanted to, this is the section of the Dayton and Cincinnati contracts version May 20th, 2025, section 15. In the prior video, sections 12 through 14, I made reference to the fact that we were doing 15, section 15 at the end of that video. We did go through one paragraph, but I was actually mistaken. So the 15 is its own video, and here it is. The reason it's its own video, it actually goes from line 276 down through 367. So that is that's pages 6, 7, and part of 8. So obviously there's a lot going on in section 15. The good thing for you, though, is when the attorneys made changes putting these contracts together, no changes took place in section 15. So section 15 is talking about the inspection contingency and how the buyer acknowledges that the buyer has been advised um, that they should do their inspections and that they're satisfied. Line 280, at the buyer's expense, the buyer has the option to have real estate inspected by an Ohio licensed home inspector and or other professional qualified to perform assessments and services in a specific area of expertise. Um, Jumping down to 283, buyer is relying solely upon their examination of the real estate personally or by buyer's inspectors and contractors, the seller's representations and certifications, including those made herein under the Ohio Residential Property Disclosure and under the lead-based paint disclosure, if any. During the inspection period, the buyer and the buyer's inspectors and the contractor shall be permitted access to the real estate at reasonable times and upon reasonable notice. And such person shall be permitted to take photographic or video imagery for further examination of the condition. Line 290, the buyer shall be responsible for any damage to the real estate caused by the buyer or its inspectors or its contractors. Line 292, furthermore, says the buyer understands and agrees that the inspection reports are not to be considered as a list of required repairs and or corrections to the real estate. Buyer understands that the inspection report may include notes which are for informational purposes only and do not reflect the condition of the real estate. Buyer agrees that the seller is not required to bring real estate improvements up to the standards of building codes and that are now applicable in the area. Buyer understands that except as it may be further agreed in writing, seller is not required to make any corrections. So then what you're doing down on line 298 is now it's requiring us to have some input. So 298 says the buyer has or has not received seller's disclosure of lead-based paint, so on and so forth. If you have got it or haven't got it, you would check it. However, in line 299, if the house was built after or 1978 or later or newer, you would check the NA box. In line 300, it's saying the buyer has or has not provided the lead-based paint booklet, and you would mark not applicable if it was 1978 or newer. And then you work your way down to page 7, and on the top of page 7, the buyer, so now we're talking about inspections. This is where the buyer waives their right to conduct any inspections. Or line 304 says the buyer elects to conduct limited inspections, and you would mark what those are. Or the rest of this section deals with 307, which says the buyer is choosing to do any and all inspections that they feel necessary. So what you're going to want to do in line 314 is you're going to want to put a date. I'm sorry, you're going to want to put a number for the number of calendar days I personally like to use 14 calendar days. What that states is that the buyer has 14 days to complete any and all inspections. And at the end of that time frame, they're then given the opportunity to submit a defect notice for the things um, that affect habitability. So I won't go through all the details, but then I would jump down into, it's called the inspection period. Then you get down to line 329, and you're now dealing with, now a defect notice has been submitted. You have up to blank calendar days called the consideration period for the seller to respond. And for me, I think somewhere between 5 and 7 days is more than enough time for the seller to respond. And then at the end of that time, at the consideration period, then you move into the settlement period. And that's in line 342. In the event the seller has timely delivered the buyer, so now the seller has responded to our defect notice. They could have countered, they could have accepted, whatever. I think that somewhere between 3 and 5 days is more than enough time in line 343 to complete the settlement period. That then leaves you with this bold paragraph in line 345. Delivery of any mutually signed, written, and accepted counteroffers or corrections or defects during the settlement period shall end the settlement period. In the event the parties fail to reach a mutual signed written agreement under this section, the contract shall automatically terminate. So there are ramifications for not hitting dates, and it's highly important that we work to, as agents, hit those dates. But it's also highly important that we keep everyone educated as part of the transaction so that we don't have these issues. And then section D um, is again a section that didn't change. So I'm gonna let you kind of reread that one on your own. But there's no sections there that we really need to be dealt with unless you're dealing with hazardous materials or other, and then that would pull line 356 into play. So that's the end of that section.